All right, thanks a lot. Welcome thanks a lot to everybody for being here for our success training with me, Dr. Greg Moody, and Laura Sanborn, master instructor, senior master instructor. You can read a little bit about us, but let's move forward because we got a lot to cover today. Thanks for being here, Master Sanborn.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to talk about bullying prevention today. One of my favorite topics, not because it's a good thing, but because it's an important thing to talk about. So we're going to talk about myths, truths, and what to do. You can see a copy of our Life Skills of Leaders book, but we're going to be bringing out our bullying prevention book soon. So that's what we're going to talk about mainly today, the content of our bullying prevention book that's coming out soon. So let's dig right into it today. And we're going to cover a lot of things today. First of all, bullying and why it's different. So bullying is different from another topic that we really like to talk about as well because it's important, but let's cover the difference. Bullying versus conflict. Bullying versus conflict. So what people get confused about is they see the term bullying gets bandied about a lot in today's day and age. And you hear it really popularized on TV, and you hear a lot of really bad stories about bullying. And there should be a lot of really bad stories about bullying because it's a pretty bad thing. And we'll talk about why it's really bad in ways that you may not know. And that's why the title of the book is going to be Myths and Truths, because there's a lot of myths about bullying. But what becomes difficult is identifying what conflict is and what bullying is. Conflict is when people are just arguing. It could be people arguing, fighting, disagreeing, having throw things in here, Master Sanborn, if you want. They could be just having a difference of opinion. There's all kinds of conflict. Even violence. Violence would be conflict. When people go to war, that's conflict. That isn't. Now there could be some bullying involved, but conflict doesn't presume bullying. We're going to talk about what bullying is next. So conflict is one side of it happens a lot, and you're not going to get rid of all conflict, just as we're not going to get rid of all bullying. But it's important to know that when people are in conflict, there's different rules to follow. And we have a whole different seminar that we teach on how to deal with conflict and resolving conflict. But you can't use the same rules. There are different rules, and we're going to see why. Any other conflict ones to add there, Master Sanborn?
Arguing, fighting, disagree. No, sir.
Okay. But there's a lot of other types of conflict. But if we're talking about kids in particular, because we work with a lot of kids, for parents and educators and for people that are working with kids, if you're seeing kids getting in an argument, fighting, you have to know the difference between these two things. Arguing, fighting, disagreeing, they've fighting over a toy, they're fighting over what to use on the playground. They're saying, oh, he said this and she said that, or he said this and he said that, she said this, she said that. That often is conflict. And the problem is it's hard for adults to know the difference. In fact, even in work environments, you see if you're a boss and you see two of your staff members arguing or fighting or complaining, that happens all the time, right? The rules for dealing with that are conflict resolution rules. And that's again a different seminar. We love teaching that as well, but there are different rules. Bullying, let's go over. Now, bullying, it's aggressive behavior, and it's intended to hurt. So it's intended to hurt. Now, the difference is, you might say, well, in conflict, they're intended to hurt. Well, not necessarily. I'm fighting with you over what I want. I don't necessarily intend to hurt you. I just want what I want. So, if I want the toy, if I'm a kid, or if I'm an adult and I want I want it my way. I just want it my way because I want if I'm an adult, if you're my spouse and I'm your spouse and I want the toothpaste tube rolled up a certain way, we're fighting over that. I just want it my way. I'm not necessarily trying to hurt your feelings. I just want it my way. Now, that'd be a silly thing to fight over, but people fight over that kind of stuff all the time. Or I want the kitchen to be cleaned up a certain way, and you want the kitchen to be cleaned up a different way. That's not intending to hurt. Now, it may be hurtful. It may end up being a hurtful situation afterwards, but bullying would be intended to hurt. I'm intending, that's one characteristic. There's a couple more we're going to cover, but there's an intention to hurt that could be in conflict. But bullying, that's one of the characteristics. The second characteristic is it's usually repeated. Now, I say usually means it could be just a one-time thing, but it's severe. So it's usually repeated. Usually repeated over time. So this is something that's intended to hurt. They do it consistently. So it could be small. Could be somebody bothering another person daily. Now, we generally are talking about kids here, guys, but this could be for adults as well. Could be somebody at work that's bothering somebody every day. If you watch the movie Office Space, you saw some bullying going on there. I won't go into detail about that. And the third thing that's really critical to know the difference is there's an imbalance of power. An imbalance of power. So the classic example of that is a bigger kid bullying a little kid. So two kids fighting on the playground, they're both in second grade, they're both the same size, they're fighting over something. Likely not bullying. But a fourth grader bothering a first grader, and they're doing it consistently over time, it's pretty hard for the first grader to fight back. They don't really have any power in that situation. So that would be a situation that probably is bullying. So bullying there's a lot of consequences of this because of that imbalance of power. And we'll talk about the details of that, but it becomes a lot more traumatic and it becomes a lot more difficult for the person that's getting bullied to overcome the situation. Now, in my world, because I deal with a lot of martial artists, and even outside of martial arts, there's a lot of this idea that, well, if they just the smaller kid punch the bigger kid, if they just stuck up for themselves, that bigger kid is going to go away. That'll solve the problem. Well, that's not going to solve the problem in most of the cases because this imbalance of power is part of the situation. I hear that all the time, and we'll see later why that's not very good advice. If it did work, okay, that'd be fine. But in most cases, that's not going to work, and it's generally not very good advice. Also, that's not very well supported by the school system or the environment and the adults around. So we'll talk about why that's probably not going to be a good situation to give advice about. So conflict, but let's start here. The first idea here is conflict and bullying are different. Conflict is the act of some sort of disagreement, arguing, fighting, opinions, violence, any kind of misunderstandings between two people. There's something coming up between two people. It's not necessarily, could be hurtful, but it's not necessarily intended to hurt. Two people want their way differently. Okay. Bullying, it's intended to hurt. It's repeated usually over time. Doesn't have to be, or it could be one time severe. And there's an imbalance of power. That imbalance of power will help you identify when it's bullying or not. Be really careful about just identifying something as bullying because it's something popular in today's day and age instead of conflict. Master Sanborn, anything to add there?
Intended to hurt includes just verbal intended to hurt. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical.
Point. Yeah, that's a good point. Intended to hurt doesn't have to be physically hurt. It could be, in fact, often it's not. It could be socially hurt, meaning that you lose your status socially, so now you don't have as many friends. It could be intended to hurt academically. It could be intended to hurt in your work environment. It could be intended to hurt in your emotionally and mentally. So there's lots of ways you could hurt somebody by bullying them. Financially, you could hurt them. So there's a lot of ways that you could hurt them. And again, we're trying to kind of go the whole gamut, both kids and adults, when we talk about bullying, because it happens in all spectrums of life.
And then imbalance of power could include things like one kid is the head of a clique, so has more people behind him as power versus the kid who's more ostracized and doesn't have any kind of backup.
No, that's a very good point. It doesn't have to be bigger, stronger. It could be more socially powerful. So yeah, they have more friends. They have a bigger group. We've seen lots of videos of kids that were smaller than the other kid that were bullying the larger kid, but they had a bigger social group, and they had more. They were more extroverted. They had more. They had more social. They had more social power in the group that they were in. They were just better at. They were better at fighting. They were better at fighting and arguing, or they were better at. They were just better at hurting other people.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. So, well, awesome. And we understand it. So there's a good difference between conflict and bullying. So understanding the difference will help you understand the rules. Now, conflict, we're going to cover at a different workshop. Bullying we'll cover right now, and the different kinds of bullying and some other things that are going to come up. So now let's talk about the kinds of bullying and what we might see. Now, one thing to understand in terms of bullying and kinds of bullying and how much it happens, I think this is important to understand, is 29.9%. So about essentially 30% of kids are involved in bullying. Now we'll get a little bit into kids specifically. The adult data is a little bit skewed. 16.9% are getting bullied, and 19.3% bully others. Now, how we define bullying is important to know. Some people try to get caught up in arguing about this. This means 2 to 3 times per month or more. 2 to 3 times per month or more. So they might be getting bullied every week, but the minimum for us to count them getting bullied would be 2 to 3 times a month or more. And by getting bullied, this is self-reported by the kids. So this isn't, teachers don't recognize bullying that frequently because it's mixed in with conflict, and they're often not taught the difference between conflict and bullying prevention like you guys just were. So this is relatively severe bullying for it to be counted as bullying in these statistics. It's happening more than this. So if they're only getting bullied once a month, that wouldn't be counted in this statistic. That's important to know. That's pretty sobering statistic if you look at it this way. All right. More bullying's happening in younger kids, by the way. That's usually a myth that people think is this data was third graders. Okay, so let's talk about kinds of bullying. Let's to summarize this. Direct bullying. So you can separate this out. And this is going to be hitting, kicking, shoving. Think about this as hitting. So this is physical contact, in some ways spitting. That's a type of bullying that kids will engage in. It also could be taunting, name calling, degrading comments, and that kind of thing. And it also could be threatening. Obscene gestures. These are pretty specific, and you could identify them very easily. So direct bullying is something you can identify. It's going to be physical. It could be verbal, and it could be threatening in a way that would be, with body movements. So think about physical, verbal, body movements. Indirect bullying would be getting other people to do stuff. So getting somebody to assault somebody. getting somebody else to do your dirty work. So, hey, go over there and push that guy. Getting somebody else to do your dirty work, spreading rumors. So telling other people that they heard you were such something, that they, back when hopefully things are better in today's day and age, but in the 80s, if you were thought of as gay, then that was really horrible to be thought of in high school, and you were going to get abused and taunted. So telling somebody else that you were gay was going to be a terrible thing, and so people would spread rumors about your sexual orientation, something like that. Even today, that's not, people can be people spread rumors about somebody dating somebody else in high school. That's high school. In elementary school, these kind of things happen, spreading rumors about somebody did something, or somebody's parents are did something bad or did something good. Rumors can be really really painful. Social isolation, just not letting people sit with you. That's pretty classic in movies, right? Nobody lets you sit at their table, but this happens all the time. Another one that happens really frequently now, that's feels very evil to me, is cyberbullying. And we could probably do a whole workshop just on cyberbullying. In a study of, I think it was 30, I'm going to look at my notes here, 3,700 kids from 6th to 8th grade. So this happens in a little bit older kids, but it's starting to get younger in middle school. 25% of girls and 11% of boys had been cyberbullied at least once. So that's pretty high. It's not, it seems like this number is getting higher. The problem with cyberbullying is, and I apologize about my handwriting there, cyberbullying is that it can be very anonymous. You can set up an account, and it doesn't have to have your own name in it. And so you could cyberbully other people, and you can be anonymous, and you could do stuff that you couldn't normally do. You couldn't do prior to internet related or cyberbullying type bullying things. So you wouldn't have any risk of getting found out. You wouldn't have any punitive ramifications because of the cyberbullying, or it'd be pretty hard to find out. The best story I heard about this was, I was teaching this a seminar on bullying back in it must have been 2010, so it was quite a while ago, and a kid was attending the seminar. It was for adults, but there was a kid attending the seminar, and he just happened to be there with his parents because they didn't have daycare for him, and he was 13, and he said that he got in big trouble at school, and even with his parents, because his phone was cloned. Now, my background is, I have an engineering degree and for my undergraduate degree, and I wouldn't know how to clone somebody's phone. I still don't know how to clone somebody's phone today. I suppose I could figure it out, or somebody on this video could figure out how to clone somebody's phone if they tried hard enough. But this kid had somebody to school clone his phone, and then they started texting mean messages to other people from his phone number. Well, nobody believed him, of course, because they came from his phone number. So they assumed that it was him that was texting out all these mean and evil messages and things from him. So it took him quite a while to get it to prove that it was somebody else. That's kind of an example of cyberbullying that I like to use as how things can happen. It's pretty bad. So these are different kinds of bullying, direct bullying and indirect bullying. The direct bullying is one that you think you can resolve really well, but now let's talk about where bullying happens. Anything to add there, Master Sanborn? You're on mute, so you can't.
No, sir. The cyberbullying was the one I was actually concerned, because that's the one I hear about the most. In terms of the older kids.
Yeah, I think cyberbullying is the one that we hear about the most now. The other ones happen the most, but people are tuned into the cyberbullying a lot. The other ones are still happening just as much. it's the cyberbullying getting layered on top, so parents are tuned into that very much. So we'll do this next one, then we'll wrap up for our section today. The thing that with direct bullying, I think that doesn't get identified is, well, I don't see a lot of hitting sometimes, or you may think, well, I don't really see this happening very much. My kids aren't really doing that. There's not a lot of bullying going on. There's not hitting or taunting or obscene gestures or those kind of things. Well, let's think about where bullying happens. In all of our studies for bullying, where you might be surprised where bullying happens. The number one place that bullying happens is in the classroom. And it's with the teacher present. Now, when I write this, I don't want you to go be upset at teachers. This is not really their fault. They're not getting training like what you're getting today. They're not typically getting a lot of information on when bullying's happening and when it's not. And it often looks like conflict. So it'll very much look like some kid just argued with another kid, or some kids just taunting another kid, or it looks just like conflict. They're not identifying the imbalance of power or some of these other things that are happening. But when we do surveys, and I've done these in schools and done workshops with them, they're very surprised that the number one place is typically in the classroom with the teacher present. The second is in the classroom without the teacher present, which doesn't happen very much. So the numbers are real small because the teacher is pretty much always present. Typically that is with the TA or somebody else, because there's always somebody there. Hallways, more stairways, playground, not surprising there. When it's the playground or athletic fields, the thing about this is typically this is where there's no teacher supervision. Now, teachers are out on the playground, don't get me wrong, but there's always going to be a dead spot where the teacher can't see, behind a tree or back around a corner or somewhere where there's not as much visibility. That's typically where bullying will happen. Cafeteria. And every school is different. When we do a workshop with the school, we'll do a survey and then we'll figure out where the hot spots are for bullying. Restrooms. I mean, there's no teacher supervision in there, and no cameras. Gym or locker rooms. And then often at the bus stop. Okay. This is probably a good place to stop today as we talk about this. These are places where bullying happens, and it's often where there's not as much teacher. Now, this top one, there is teacher supervision, but this, remember, is where the kids are spending most of their time. So it's normal that would be where most quantity of bullying happens. It may not be where the highest percentage of bullying happens. So again, don't blame the teachers for this. It's just good to understand that bullying does happen inside the classroom with the teacher present. So when we do workshops with the teacher, it's important for them to understand. And it's a big revelation when they understand that imbalance of power difference, that's when bullying's happen. And then when we talk about what interventions to do and how a school with a full program with bullying prevention can understand how to make a big difference in this, it'll make a huge difference in their identification ability and then what interventions they take with bullying. But that's what our goal is for the next part of our bullying prevention podcast here we're doing right now, and our video that we're going to help you with on the next stage. So thanks a lot for being here for part one. Now you know a little bit about bullying and the difference between bullying and conflict, about what types of bullying happen, and where the bullying's happening. Okay. Anything else to add, Master Sanborn, for a wrap up today?
No, sir. No,
all
sir.
right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate your attention today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, sir.